Last week, nothing much out of this. Yeah, no,
I'm trying to capture it.
Did you move the right places?
yeah, a bit more to follow it up and be good now. Good talk.
All good, thanks, Grant.
Better off than we were.
Well, I'd like to welcome everyone to the June meeting of the Edward River Council and declare the meeting open. I'd like to make a few statements. The live streaming statement, the Edward River Council wishes to advise members of the public that committee meetings will be recorded and will be available after each meeting on the council's website. All care will be taken to maintain the privacy of those in attendance. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed your consent is given in the event your image is broadcast. This includes any filming by television cameras in attendance if this is approved by the General Manager or the Mayor. Item 3 is the acknowledgement of country. I would like to acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Wamba Wamba Pareppa Pepper people. I would also like to acknowledge and pay my respects to past Aboriginal elders, the present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who reside within this area and their future generations. Item 4, statement of purpose. I come here as a councillor freely and without bias to represent the views of the community in considering the matters before us today, to vote in a matter I consider to be in the best interest of the community and to observe the code of conduct and respect the rule of the chair and the views of my fellow councillors. We are all in attendance, so there's no apologies for leave of absence. The minutes of the previous meeting in May have been circulated. Would someone like to move that they be received? It's moved by Councillor Fogarty, seconded by Councillor Betts. All those in favour? No. Against? Carried. Disclosures of interest. I've got one here from Councillor McCrab for item 10.8. To do the funding agreement for Murray Regional Tourism Board.
Thanks, Sonny.
Sorry.
Sorry?
You going to step out of the vote for the seniors living precinct?
Yeah, I put my thing in for, is it 10.6?
And also there's one from Councillor Betts in regard to.
And there's one here.
Yes, sorry.
And one for Councillor Hall as well. All those are received. Thank you. Mayoral minutes. Yes, I'd just like to present a mayoral minute, and it's probably to record on record for the council of actions that were taken in workshop discussions, and that action was that the current composition of the seniors living project, especially the councillors, Councillor Fogarty, Councillor Hall and Councillor Betts, that they should remain on that committee until the formation of the 355 committee. The input and guidance has been invaluable in getting to the stage where we are. We'd like it to continue until the 355 committee gets established. Now, if those councillors are on that committee, that's a separate issue, but we'll wait till we get that. I think we have discussed it. Would someone like to, I moved from the chair, would someone like to second?
To second that, Mr Mayor.
Seconded by Councillor Fogarty. Any questions or comments?
Just, Mr Mayor, if I can, we might just capture the words of the motions, just to make sure we're clear on that is. The mayoral minute is moved by the Mayor that the composition of the Seniors Living Precinct Committee, consisting of Councillors Fogarty, Hall and Betts, remain in place until the Seniors Living Precinct 355 committee is established.
Fine.
More comfortable.
Been moved by Councillor Fogarty, seconded by Councillor
No,
Wallace.
you moved it.
Oh, sorry, I moved it, seconded by Councillor Fogarty. Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? No? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Reports of committees, nil, and reports to council, item 10.1.
Mr Mayor, standard report to just outline the attendance of meetings by councillors, the Mayor and the General Manager over the last month.
Mr Mayor, could we add Councillor Crab to the May 7 Pretty Pine budget roadshow, please?
And councillor Fogarty, who was slack
Councillor
and
Fogarty.
did not get her meeting attendance back to Belinda, to both the Pretty Pine and the Blighty.
Were you with Denny, Pat?
And Denny,
Yes,
And
you
Denny.
would.
yeah.
So
That's May 13.
when we don't want Blighty,
No more additions? Any questions on those?
Sorry, I did go to the Wanganella one as well. Mr. Laws didn't pick that one
Missed
up.
that, did I?
encourage councillors to please inform Belinda
Yes,
of where they've been.
well, Mr.
Councillor Wallace.
Chairman,
No, ask the Mayor what the flat plaque was.
The flat park is a project that's been brought up by the Indigenous people who used to live down the flat park's just in the back of Chippenham Park Road,
Yeah.
Ewood River Oval in the 60s.
Yes.
The Salvation Army actually built a structure for, there's some little bit of confusion, but Moonacalla people were going either into Denny and Macaulay Street or coming in, they were housed in on the flat. There was a variety of people, and what's left is the concrete slab.
Mm.
The building, and we've got photographs of the building and whatever it might be. And in speaking with Vince Ross, was brought up there in the 60s, and his other chap who is from Wagga, they believe it is and agreed to by the Indigenous people. It's a significant site in the local tradition of the Indigenous people. So they said, what can we do to commemorate that site? And so we've talked about it, and of course, keeping dollars at the plaques, the slab's already there. They've got a plaque being produced about the families that actually resided there. A little bit of a story. We're going to find them a rock to put the plaque on, to put on the slab. There's going to be a little bit of an outside sitting area, they call it what, a communal area where they chat. And then just probably a tourism information board that you could use that as part of the river, to walk on the north side of the river. Michelle Cobb's been involved with me, and I've already spoken with Mark in regard to, you got that rock here?
Yeah, where is the rock coming from?
Very good.
A long way away.
Well, yeah.
Under the
So
ground.
look, I think it's,
Covered in plants now anyway.
you hear some of the stories about what happened in the 60s here. It's quite significant. A lot of people, I didn't realise until 12 months ago that they were down there.
Mm.
I think a lot of people would be the same.
Yep.
So it's just another little recognising our history, and for our Indigenous people, I think it's a
Very good.
significant step for the council to do.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very good answer.
and I think it's even more significant, Mr. Mayor, that Jeanette Crew, who was Jeanette Ross, we also lived on the flat. And quite significant this week that Jeanette was awarded an OAM in the Queen Birthday Honours. So,
And she's to be congratulated for that. You stole my thunder for later on, but that's fine. But
yes,
Yes.
yes. Mm.
any other questions? You asked questions before we moved and seconded. Would someone like to move the report be noted? Councillor Wallace, seconded by Councillor Bull. Any other further questions or comments? Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against, carried. Resolutions of council, item 10.2.
Monthly report, Mr. Mayor, just providing the status of the council and the community on the resolutions that have been carried out by the council and the status of their implementation.
Would someone like to move the preliminary note, which is to note the information of resolutions? Moved by councillor Fogarty, seconded by
10.2.
10.2.
Yeah, sorry, Cassie, you put those, that's 10.1, the Wallace and Bull, and we're now on 10.2.
And was that seconded, councillor McGrath?
Crap.
Just getting the minutes right.
Yeah.
Just pause. and take a second.
I thought Phil was looking at me a lot, but I realised he was looking at the screen.
You expect me to say something?
I'm not asking another question.
Yes, we're right with the minutes now, Mr. Mayor.
Right, moved and seconded. Any further comments or questions on any of those items on the resolutions? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 10.3, investment and reserves report, Paul May.
I'm happy to move that, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by councillor McCrabb. Seconded. Councillor Metcalfe. Questions or comments? Councillor McCrabb.
I just, there was some query regarding the engagement in Imperium Markets, which was a recommendation from the ARIC committee, reviewed two different agencies, and it was decided through that committee that Imperium be engaged, because it was felt that the cost would be outweighed by the benefit from having a monthly report from an organisation like Imperium to give us the best options for our investments.
And I'll declare that I raised that question, which because I just don't remember the company Imperium in my readings, but so probably it's my fault I didn't read enough detail. So thanks for that, councillor McCrabb. Any other questions or comments?
I do have a question. Are we tracking the benefit through our? Yeah, are we tracking how well they are performing and the benefit, the cost benefit from it?
Yes, yeah, no, Amanda and I were discussing that yesterday. So yes, we have commenced tracking that now that we've moved on to the paid model and no longer in the trial.
Right.
Yep. So we can report to council.
So is that sort of quarterly?
Yeah, we can report
Yeah.
quarterly and we can report to ARIC as well.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions? We've had it seconded, moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. 10.4, debt recovery and financial hardship policy.
Would you invite me to?
Oh, I know this one. This is one. Yep. So this is an update of our debt recovery and hardship policy. We had an interim policy in place over COVID, and that has now ceased. But with the implementation of rates harmonisation on the 1st of July, we wanted to offer the opportunity for those heavily impacted by rates harmonisation, the option of going through our hardship policy to apply for assistance, and that would mean that there would be potentially no interest charged on their payments once they've entered into an approved payment plan and are sticking to that plan. So the amended policy is in there. You'll see it. It's under a special amendment under rates harmonisation that I'll take as read, and we'll review that in a 12 months time.
So the message is, if you've got concerns, contact us and you're going to tick the box.
Yep, that's good.
I'm happy to move, Mr.
Moved by councillor McCrabb, seconded by councillor Bull. Any further questions or comments? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 10.5, councillor mayor and mayor fees for 21-22.
Yes, this is a recommendation from the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal. So it is recommended to have a 2% increase on councillor and mayor fees. We have provided a table that will show you the minimum and maximums payable and the impact that it would have on the fees for the 2021-2022 period. So we're asking council to adopt that recommendation. And also to note that there is provision as of the 1st of July 2022 to make superannuation payments for councillors, but that will be up to the individual councils to determine. Next term,
Yeah.
yes.
Happy to move that, Mr.
Moved
Mayor.
by councillor Wallace, second by councillor McCrabb. Any questions or comments? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. 10.6, which is the Red River Seniors Living Precinct.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This is I suppose, a milestone moment for the Edward River Seniors Living Precinct, as the committee has been going through an extensive period of work since the last resolution in February of this year. There's fair to say there's been work on a business case that has adopted a number of principles and assumptions until those assumptions are tightened up. It shows an initial business case for the seniors living precinct based on selling dwellings off the plan, operating the seniors living precinct under a deferred management fee structure, similar to other seniors living type precincts or retirement type villages, and initially adopting a 40% deferred management fee over an 8-year term. And based on those principles, the initial in the confidential attachments show a return to surplus, operating surplus in year 5, which from a recommendation point of view seems to be viable at this stage, and we recommend proceeding to the next stage of the seniors living precinct, which is to adopt 6 floor plans to commence the development of a Section 355 committee to govern the project and the operation into the future. That will be the subject of another council resolution. We would also be recommending that we seek some expert advice in terms of establishing an entry price that the market can bear, being a balance between being a viable project and you know, encouraging people to come into the precinct. Also engaging an independent agent for the marketing and pre-selling of those dwellings, and proceeding to tender for design and construct for both the civil infrastructure and the dwellings. And we propose to design and install a new sign on the site and to develop designs for a gateway entrance to the precinct, and also to make some budget provision for capital reserves for the initial stages of the project. I would like to just stress to the councillors that this would take us through another gate of detail into the project, but there won't be any construction commencing until a further decision of the council, which would, if it all proceeds well, seek to engage contractors to commence the work for construction. So this, and it will also firm up costs and also firm up the business case in terms of rather than making certain assumptions, which are educated estimates, we will be able to make sure that those fees and costs for construction of the development will be more known. And so it's recommended to adopt the recommendation within this report.
I'll move. Question.
Moved by councillor McAllister,
I'll
second by councillor Wallace. Question,
In
councillor.
in the design aspect of it, is the design taking into account disability requirements later in the? So that's incorporated in the initial design, because a lot of these things apparently they're built and then when people get to a disabled point, they don't actually have everything in place, noggins aren't there, the whole thing, so.
Yeah, through Mr Mayor, that's a good question. Thanks, councillor McAllister. The design of these dwellings are specifically to be able to cater for more elderly and more frail people. They won't in the initial stage, initial build, have things like handrails and you know, other sort of aids to help with movement, unless someone specifically requests it as part of the build. But they have all of the things internally into the walls to take care of handrails. They have shorter distances between the kickboards and the outer edge of the cabinets to allow people to stand closer. No lips in terms of entrances to showers and things like that. So very much that's part of the design to make sure that these dwellings are constructed specifically for more older people.
Just a comment on that, councillor McAllister, all of the properties that we looked at, anybody whose mobility was compromised in any way would have been able to move quite freely throughout each of the properties, both from access into the property, they were all flat access into the property, and movement even through the garage and right throughout the house would enable easy access.
Well, that's good to hear, because, you know, a lot of these ones that were built, you know, 20 odd years ago, they just didn't have those facilities.
No.
And one of the
Yeah.
people that actually goes in and actually does it firstly says, well, you know, there's no noggins for this,
No.
there's nowhere to screw it in, but
Yep.
no, that's very good.
Yep, bathrooms are
Yep.
all level flooring, yeah.
Could add, there's even, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, provision made for they insulate the garages, because it's, you know, fair to say it's a common theme that older people in their retirement years love to tinker in the garage. So insulation and heating and cooling into the garage, so just allows for that.
Wait till you get off.
Get some squatters.
And the other one was the age restrictions. Is there any age restrictions in this?
At this stage, the committee has decided to work on 65 and over.
Yep.
How that pays out into a governance is still yet to be worked through, into a governance arrangement. But it's definitely, that's the reason for adopting a deferred management fee structure, is that the market would be specifically restricted or limited to those people who are interested in coming into a retirement type community.
Is that old enough?
Well, we did
Debate
we're getting
70.
closer.
65's the new 55.
Oh, I'm nearly there. I'm
Young
nearly there.
mate.
It's a very large recommendation, but when I look through, there's some stuff that we can get moving straight away, like the signage of the project and access. So they're things that people will see physically happen there. And in regard to the mural minute, what's the process for recommendation 5?
We'd go out to a quote arrangement out to the market,
Right.
and seek an independent agent. Whether that's someone locally or someone externally, we'll have to just see what the market provides. But it could be someone who's potentially a retired real estate agent, someone who just knows the market quite well, or it could be a bona fide company who is engaged to market and pre-sell those dwellings. So we go through a quote arrangement.
So we'll have for the precinct a sole agent for selling.
Correct.
Just making that clarified.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments?
So what's the out clause on that?
That'll be subject to the negotiations. We haven't gone to the detail of what those entry and exit issues will be at this stage. And it will have to be a matter for the committee to determine as to where do we finish with them. And it could be like a 12-month period.
I'm just saying, if they don't satisfactorily sort of move the project along,
They get the boot.
well, that's what I'm saying. But
That
where's
was
the
it.
where's the out
There'll
clause?
be
If
a
it's,
clause in there.
if it's exclusive, we just need to make sure that there's an out clause in it somewhere that's we can activate. Not there's an out clause there, but we can't activate.
performance criteria. in the contract.
Any other questions?
No, look, it's just a comment, Mr Mayor, just before this goes to the vote. I'd just like to note and compliment the staff on the work that the staff have done to get this to the point where it is at the moment. That it is a very exciting point that we're ready to push the button and go. And there's been a lot of work that's gone on behind the scenes that the staff have taken on board, both from the engineering aspect of the project and particularly to Michelle and Michelle's team in getting grants, the $1 million grant, and to the general manager. It's been an enormous amount of work, and they're to be fully congratulated for their input.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions, comments? I'll move and second it. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Well done. Yeah, we better wait for it. Moving on to item 10.7 is the MOU with the Denny Plain and the Plains Festival. There we go.
Thank you.
Morning.
Morning, councillors. So this follows on from the workshop last month where we discussed the renewed MOU between council and the Denny Plain and the Plains Festival. And so based on your feedback at that workshop, we have made some amendments to the proposed MOU, particularly around the in-kind works and how that will be a carrying balance over the 3-year agreement. So attached to this report, you'll find the amended MOU from this year and through till 2023 for your consideration and approval. Any comments or feedback?
I certainly have a comment. Through you, Mr Mayor. Since we had initial discussions regarding the MOU, it's come to my attention that we still have Denny Play on the Plains as a debtor to council, and also another organisation that was through the Youth Muster owes council money, and we're still currently pursuing these debts. Had I been aware of this issue when we discussed the memorandum of understanding, I would have raised this point and it would have changed my stance on where we go with these discussions. So, and I still don't think at this stage the debts are not going to be written off as far as I know. However, they're being pursued and they already have been pursued for some time. So I think there's another opportunity here for council to recover those debts by having the conversation directly with the committee regarding it is, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to mention the figure in public forum. However, it's quite a considerable amount of money. And we are, potentially going into an agreement where we're giving the committee money to secure the future of the festival. However, I think if they're a bad debtor, we should be reviewing our decision before we do anything in this, like a formal agreement like this. It's just my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Crabbe. Any other questions or comments?
Well, I'd just like to back up Councillor McCrabb. I think we're probably jumping the gun a fraction. We should see how we get on with the debt recovery people before we sign this.
Has that been pursued at all?
Through Mr Mayor.
Any feedback on it?
Yes, we're still getting to the bottom. This is somewhat hampered by a bit of poor record keeping probably in the past, and so that's why we chose to withdraw those amounts from the confidential report that seeks to write off certain debts. So hence councillors will see that it's a smaller amount than was initially briefed, the councillors were initially briefed on at the workshop. And I would just say that some of those figures, as they're being clarified, we will be able to have those conversations with the Play on the Plains Festival. And I don't think there is any, from what I can see, any malintent on any part. It's simply probably a misunderstanding. And so I think we should be able to clarify these over the next month or so. But I don't know any more than that, except to say we're working on it more diligently since we spoke at the workshop.
Yeah, these debts have been incurred before this council became established.
Absolutely. There's quite a history, yeah.
I think what I'm hearing, you're saying that you'd rather sort this out before we go into a new MOU.
I would agree.
Yeah, I agree with that too.
Council might wish to move a deferral motion.
General Manager suggests you might
Absolutely.
move a deferral motion. We don't
I'll
pass it.
second that.
Any questions or comments?
Did you want to put a date on?
Well, I would say that we should refer back to the next council meeting. I'd like to try and see if we can get it done before the new council comes in. So we've got two opportunities for that. That's the July meeting and
July meeting.
There is a
meetings in July and the 1st of August before we go into caretaker mode.
I'd also just like to add a comment, Mr Mayor. I don't have any issue with what's in the MOU. It's just the previous issue of that's my concern. So
So let's see if we can sort it out and then go ahead with the new MOU. That's fine. Okay. Any other further comments or questions? Now, do we have a mover and a second? A mover by
I'll move
councillor
that.
Krebs, seconded by councillor Metcalfe, because he would jump down my throat.
oh yeah.
Mayor, so the motion on the table is that this matter be deferred until the next council meeting.
Yes. Moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Those against? Carried. 10.8. Funding for Murray Regional Tourism.
So another MOU. This also follows on from Mark Francis presenting at the last council workshop. This is another increase in funding over a 3-year period for consideration from council.
I'll move the motion, Mr Mayor.
Moved by councillor Fogarty, seconded by councillor McCallum. Any questions? I just think the discussions we had at the workshop where they hadn't had any increase in their base rate for 5 years certainly highlights the need to have a continual increase of your CPI or whatever it might be.
Yes,
The pain is a lot less than
yes.
pain after 5 years.
And doing it as the table's laid out, I think, is a realistic approach rather than a substantial increase in one hit.
Yep. Moved and seconded. Any further questions or comments? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. 10.9. Thank you, Erica. Michelle, good morning.
Good morning, councillors.
Morning.
Michelle.
Really, let's see which one we're up to. Isn't it, Shelley?
10.9. Library agreement.
Library agreement, okay, thank you. So following on from the dissolution of the Central Murray Library Agreement, in
November 2019, Council resolved to commence the process to establish the Edward River Library and dissolve the agreement. So council officers obviously met with Murray River Council officers during the year and just recently held a meeting to dissolve that agreement. The date for separation is on June 30th this year, just to make it quite a clean break. And Councillor Ball chaired that meeting. So the dissolution has gone through, and we will just be tidying up the financial side of things shortly. So I think we've received our last bill for council staff at Murray River, and they'll be sending us a bill to pay up the 16% of the library reserve that we owe Murray River Council. In the meantime, we've been rebranding the library, and so it will be ready with a brand new website, new signage, new library cards, all of those sorts of things. All of that's been going on in the background so that it's ready for July 1, 2021.
All right.
Would you like me to read all of those?
No. But with the new library rebranding, are we having an actual
Launch?
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Right.
So that's in my next report. Well, we've got a whole range of new computers, some VR technology, and the new website, as well as some new apps where people can access the library services digitally. So we've got quite a bit to show people, and we hope, and we're already seeing a huge increase in membership, and I think that's also to do with having customer service down there, but 115 new members since January. Pretty
It's certainly a turnaround compared to previous years.
sure is. It's a
That's
great,
right.
great result.
Good to hear.
Do you, excuse me, through you, Ms. Smith, do you think having that front office of council in the library's made a difference to people going into the library
And seeing what's there,
Yeah.
absolutely.
yeah, I think it's been a
Absolutely.
really,
I think
real
there's,
positive. Yeah.
I don't think people realised what was actually there, and when they're there to do the services, they're just joining.
No, it's
Borrowing.
been-
And the borrowings have gone up, books and digital.
And it's such a pleasant environment, like it's a great environment.
It is. It is. It's a real lovely environment.
Go there Tuesday and you hear play school being played all the time. Recommendations here. Would someone like to move that we adopt the recommendation? Moved by councillor Betts, seconded by councillor Fogarty. Any further questions for Michelle? Comments? Forward to the big launch. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, carried. 10.10.
Okay, now, last time I was here to present this report, I promised that I would make it much more succinct. So the report's long, but I won't take too much time. I do want to congratulate my team on what they've achieved between March and May 2021. The number of events that have been presented to both the business and industry sector, as well as the community sector, have been really outstanding. And the number of grants that, in particular, Erica has been able to achieve for Youth and Seniors Week is really to be commended. You can see that we've done a lot with youth over the last time. There's quite a lot of money that's been given to that sector, and we were able to take advantage of that. The one that I wanted to point out most of all was one that possibly wasn't might not have been as well attended as we hoped, which was the Chill Fest. But it was a $10,000 grant, and $9,000 of that went to local businesses. So I think, unfortunately, and the amount of marketing that Erica did was absolutely outstanding. So it's just it's a little bit sad that people didn't, as many people that we wanted didn't attend, but the work was fantastic, and the benefit to the community was great.
And certainly, I think from the person who participated, it was a fabulous event and everyone who was there had a great time. And I'm sure if it's repeated again, that word of mouth will do a great deal in collecting more numbers for a future event. Because it was a fabulous day and the team had worked so hard to make it a great day. And it was nice to see that it was not just council, but it was a partnership event with other organisations within the community who fully participated also.
Thanks, Pat. And most of our events do have a partnership arrangement, and so we work with many of the community groups to deliver as many events as possible. In terms of business, we've been meeting with quite a few developers and investors. So there seems to be a real sense of optimism and positivity around Deniliquin at the moment. Obviously, we're finding it difficult to find some land. So once we do the EOI for the airport land, I think that'll be taken up. And I've got quite a few people who are interested in that already talking to us. We have, we've met with many businesses ranging from tourism businesses all the way through to large manufacturers, and we'll hopefully bring all of that to fruition. You might have noticed going past the Blighty Pub and the Royal Mail in Beroogan that they've been painted through the village painting projects, and they look fantastic. And Wanganella's just about to start.
It's probably not the feedback around Blighty, but anyway.
Wrong colours.
Wrong colour.
Anyway, we're just blaming it on that heritage advisor from Wagga and the previous owner of the hotel.
Well,
Gilbert Bain barrel me.
I was summoned there before it even got painted.
We can play
What's
this.
the issue?
Oh no, they painted the shutters and the local patrons, they like to go in there and get cheered up, not depressed.
Oh, so dark.
The painter didn't enjoy painting, I can assure you.
I will say, Michelle, the Beroogan.
Yeah,
Beroogan's
Beroogan's great.
fantastic.
Looks fantastic.
and the Wanganella store is ready to be painted, Erica. So Monday.
Only grey guys, no worries.
Only
Just the other developers that you've been talking to, are they local or are they external looking at coming in?
all local. Yeah.
All local.
All local. Expansions.
That's
Right.
excellent.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
So
the feedback from the painting contractor was that you guys have done an excellent job in coordinating everything. So congratulations to you from the contractor. Not that he was on the take or anything like that, but he was just saying you guys did a really good job and you're really quite easy to work with, which is great. Thank you.
I think the Blighty Pub looks great.
Not just the footy colours.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Oh,
Really? It's supposed to be all red.
It's anyway. It's
Well,
done.
We're not going there.
You'll have noticed so our projects obviously are wide and varied, but we've put in a lot of funding applications lately, including the seniors living, which luckily got $1 million, and there's still a $1.5 million application in under BBRF, which we hope to get. I have spoken to people around that. May be unlikely given that they're both federal grants. So, and just depends whether those departments are talking to each other. The agribusiness master plan, we also put an application in under the Murray-Darling Basin plan. And the signage project, you would have seen that most of the signs from stage 1A, well, actually that stage is finished and we're now undergoing stage 1B to complete the signage project through the Drought Communities Project. What else we've got here? The Pepin Heritage Centre Master Plan is one that we're working on at the moment with Siobhan Binks, who designed the depot and also helped with the Ute Muster Museum. So she's a local designer. Many of you may know her, but she's actually doing up some plans for us to be able to apply for funding. And there's just yesterday an opportunity popped up to apply for some money. So hopefully we can, we'll have that finished and ready to use. It's under a state government program, Tourism Infrastructure Fund. There's two rounds of it. I think one is around accessibility and disability, making sure that tourism product is more accessible, and the other one is around new product development, major product development. That's the one that we would go for. So what else? This is probably very good. In terms of media, I want to thank Tiffany for all of her work that she's been doing to promote the council, and especially with the new website agreement that we've got in place, that will drive and is driving a lot more traffic to the website, and also the videos and the live feeds that she's doing after all the council meetings really is helping out too with our profile. The Visitor Information Centre, some really great stats there. I think the Friday of the long weekend, was the long weekend, it was the Friday before the closure of Victoria. They had their busiest day ever, 180 people through the door. It's absolutely flat out. And people were coming in droves to Deniliquin. Probably wouldn't have happened had COVID not happened, because it's put Denny on the map. And the library, I mentioned before, some of the great work that's going on there in terms of technology. So we've got brand new computers. We've got really great new programs. People can go and actually do a lot more work with, some of the, it's not here, VR technology. I think we're going to have an open day to explain that. Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, the challenge is for all councillors to have a crack at a virtual reality headset. See what it's like. It's amazing if you've never used it.
Yeah, well, Matt's going to, I've roped him in to actually do some demonstrations. So on our launch day, it'll be quite a bit of fun. Yeah, and the stats through the library are improving. So really everything's on the way up. Good.
Probably just raised the question, the feedback on the customer services being in the library. Where do we go? Do we try and have, with the estates building being fixed up, do we stop that, or do we have one in each, or what it might be? There could be options here for people to think about. Because, you know, it makes it a lot easier for the brigade that do use the library. They've got people there who can answer questions straight away. Food for thought. You can take that off.
Take that off.
All right. Questions or comments, Michelle?
I'll move.
Moved by Councillor McAllister, seconded by Councillor McCradden. No questions?
Well done.
Thanks.
Yep.
Well done. Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Draft industrial strategy 10.11.
Who's this? Who's this person?
Wait till she tells you the exciting news.
What is
The slab of the Carnarvon pub has been poured.
I was going to add that a second ago, but I thought it wasn't in.
So aren't we going to congratulate her on her new position that
Yes.
she's taken on, whoever she is?
Councillors, can I introduce our new Manager of Development Services, Mari Sutton. Who's been in an
She
acting
was-
role for some time and has been successful in a competitive field to secure the role permanently.
Some young
Yes,
family.
congratulations.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, so this report is for adoption of the draft industrial land strategy. That was placed on public exhibition in April for 28 days. And presentation of the draft strategy was made to the Developers Forum. The strategy's been well received, and at the close of the exhibition period, no submissions had been received. So this is, the recommendation is the strategy be adopted and forwarded to Department of Planning, Industry and Environment so they can endorse the strategy.
I'll move.
Moved by councillor McAllister, seconded by councillor. Just a question, Mary. I know no submissions were received, but how was the inquiry about the strategy?
Very minimal. I had one inquiry. So I think presenting it to the Developers Forum, there was a bit of discussion because that were probably a good audience to present it to. But other than that, I had only one inquiry, and that was to ask me what a dirty industry was. It's an industry by way of emissions or noise or whatever that needs to be separated from other development. So, yeah, so it's only suitable in certain industrial areas.
All right, we've got it moved and second. Any other questions or comments? All those in favour?
Right.
Carry.
Next is the Environmental Services report for May. So that basically just goes through applications received, processing times, number of applications in comparison to this time last year, number of planning certificates. Also included in that report some info about the New South Wales Planning Portal, which comes into effect from the 1st of July. It's mandatory that we now accept all DAs, construction certificates, compliant development certificates through the portal. No one will be able to come in and lodge an application anymore. So that's going to be a big change. Yeah, so we're gearing up for that. We did receive funding for $50,000 very recently. So we have to have that expended, and we have to be ready to receive our first applications on the 1st of July. So yeah, there's been a bit going on there. Department of Planning came to council and presented to Edward River Council staff and Murray River Council staff on the portal. So that was attended by 20 staff. So that was a good roll up. And we also had a one for developers and the general public. And that attracted developers from Deniliquin and Echuca. And we had 25 attend that training. So it was very well attended. But yeah, so we're just busily trying to get that all set up, get our e-payment options set up, and hopefully we will obviously be giving people assistance. We're just working out where we give them assistance, in what location, but yeah, it's going to be a big change for us and for applicants. So we're just trying to make that transition as smooth as we can.
So where is your thought about, and I appreciate we've been saying the big changes in a fortnight's time. I didn't realise it was that
Yeah,
close,
it's
but,
very quick.
where are you going to, is the assistance, is it over at the customer service in the library? Is it back around in your area? What's your thoughts?
Yeah. Our thoughts, it would be a lot easier if we can just set up a hot desk basically at where we are based, so we can assist customers rather than, yeah, one-on-one, rather than having to them make an appointment and have to go up to the customer service, and it'll be environmental services staff that will have to help them. So yeah, our thoughts are we're just working through where we can set up, and that desk will be just there for us to go through and help them, because everything will obviously have to be scanned in, and a lot of people won't have access to those facilities, so, yeah. So, that's probably our thought now, that that will be the easiest place if we can do that.
Not being cynical, but I think it just shows that it's all been designed by someone in Sydney.
Yeah.
Spot on.
And the grant that we received, there was a lot of resistance from smaller
50,000.
councils, yeah,
50,000.
yeah. And there was a lot of resistance from smaller councils, and then all of a sudden we got this $50,000 funding, so yeah, they got us on board, but.
They weren't going to fund it.
Right.
And
They
I
weren't
guess
going
it-
to fund it until before. it was
Yes,
back.
there was no talk of funding until, it was getting, close to the crunch time, and then they.
So what's that 50,000 supposed to cover?
Well,
You setting your ability to do it up.
yeah, that's right, to having the ability to, scan things and to have monitors and things for their customers to be able to log on to. It'll also, we'll have to try and integrate it with Tech One, so when the applications are coming in to us, they can just slot into our system. So, yeah, there's a bit of hardware and software and things that we need to.
Could be some
Yes,
room in the
no.
estates building for that, by the sounds of it.
I'm hoping to get there.
That's where we hope to set up all the monitors and things, but it might be, no, it won't be by the 1st of July, obviously.
No.
Yeah.
Councillor Wallace.
So there'll be a link on the council website to the New South Wales Planning Portal. Is that how people would?
Yeah, that's how we're
We can do it that
working
way.
with TIF to get that, set up. So, yeah, that's exactly how we expect it'll work. And, hopefully they'll also be able to pay, because there's no payment function through the planning portal yet. But at least if people can pay through our website, that will make it streamlined, so they're not having to lodge online, but then come in and pay, which would, defeat the purpose of it, so.
Yeah.
So you're used to the people that would probably need this service.
Yeah.
How much difficulty is going to be for the type of people that deal here?
Yeah, quite a bit. Not for the ones who are lodging applications on a regular basis, but the one-offs, quite a bit. So we definitely don't think in any way that we won't be still meeting with them first, and when they're not just going to be lodging without assistance. So yeah, we're gearing up for that.
You're not expecting it to actually take physically longer for this process now to go through, like your 34 days is going to go out, is it?
Watch this space, I'd imagine. Yeah, I am, possibly am, yes. I won't be surprised if it does. I mean, we're learning the system too, and they'll be learning it. So yeah, I mean, when the presentations and when we go through it with the department, it all sounds very streamlined, but yeah, but we'll see what the reality is. Yeah.
In practice.
Yes.
The long-term intent is obviously to be much more efficient, particularly in the back end. So it comes through into our records very, very quickly and so forth. But that takes time, change, and getting their system talking to our system is half the battle. So that's still a work in progress.
Please keep us informed, Murray, because I know the track history of Brandon is not brilliant.
Yes. But all precious. Just a question, Mr. Mayor. So if there's a problem that's detected with the application, will it be Sydney that will be resolving that? Or no? Basically, there will be some. Most of it, they're just actually receiving and passing it on to us, and then it'll be held until we say, yeah, that's okay, or we need more info or whatever, and then the process starts. But I'm not really sure why. They're saying they're not tracking councils, they're not intervening in individual applications. I'm not sure why they're doing this, but.
Not Big Brother, but Big Sister.
Yeah.
Right.
Now might be.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so they won't actually get involved in individual applications, but we need to obviously go back through them when we determine it, so they know that it's, and they'll know our timeframes and things. Yeah.
Which is probably not a bad thing for benchmarking for the
Well,
get an idea where everybody sits.
yeah, that's right. And we do have to report on that annually anyway.
Yeah.
So this might just save that step and it'll capture it. But yeah, the only problem we have is if something goes wrong and we can't change things in the system, then we'll have the delay of getting
Getting
them
it
to,
back.
yeah, do some work in the background to sort out any issues. But
Murray, with that hot desk idea, which I think is a great idea, is that going to be available just for general inquiry? Because you always get people saying, "Oh, how do I get onto council? How do I ring council?" And there's always a roadblock getting to see someone.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
is that hot desk? Can they just go in there and say, "Look, can I see someone?"
yeah. I mean, because of the situation with the
So,
renovations, they'll need to
Oh,
just,
yeah,
if
yeah.
they just ring and then we can bring them in. But yeah, for pre-DAs and things like that, absolutely, yeah. That's easier if we can be there because then we've got access to everything we need. And as long as we know they're coming in, then,
Yeah.
we can just make that available, yeah.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Moved by councillor McCrab, seconded. Councillor Betts, any further questions or comments on the report? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Item 10.13, the Pretty Pine Preserve Committee's request.
With you, Cathy.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At the last council meeting, council received a request through the public forum from the Pretty Pine Reserve Committee regarding construction of synthetic tennis courts out of the Pretty Pine Reserve. Council is working with the committee regarding the construction of one synthetic tennis court at the existing clay courts under the Local Roads Community Infrastructure Round 1 program. The committee have requested that they can work with council in terms of constructing a second synthetic court. At the moment, there's two clay courts. In construction of a second synthetic court, with council providing $15,000 funding and the committee providing $15,000, a 50-50 funding arrangement for the second court to be built at the same time as the first one. The committee do have funds. At the moment, they've allocated $15,000 of their funds towards the construction of the veranda at the caretaker's cottage. And as part of the agreement, council would look at the construction of that veranda just as part of its building renewal program, given that the caretaker's cottage is an asset under council's asset register. So yeah, the committee has sort of requested the additional funding and the work in partnership with council for this.
I'm happy to move that.
Moved by councillor McGrath, seconded.
I'm happy to see.
Councillor Ball, any questions, comments?
Just make the look after it.
Do we have any indication, are they happy to go in the 50-50 deal?
Yes, thank you, councillor McCrabb. Yes, they have. So we've, following the workshop, we're in contact with their representative who has, provided that they're happy with that. We've also had discussions with them about the maintenance, so they'll take on the maintenance of it under the sort of existing agreement for the maintenance of the reserve. We have spoken to them and encouraged them to talk with the Deniliquin Lawn Tennis Club, given they've got similar courts and some of the issues that they have.
Any other questions, comments? I think it'd be pertinent for them to feed back to council on usage after it's been done, just to gauge whether we probably made the right decision or not. Moved and seconded.
Return on investment, Matt.
Oh, well, you don't get any return
No,
back,
yeah,
but
yeah,
usage
no.
of the investment.
Well, I don't think they'll wear the green.
All right, we've moved and seconded. Yes, it's okay. All those, any further comments? No? All those in favour?
No.
Yeah. you, carried. 10.14.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Airport.
Yeah, so as part of the current Deniliquin Airport Master Plan, there's been an area of land at the intersection of Cemetery Road and Midnight Drive that's been earmarked as a residential Sky Park development. So that's where people would be allowed to build a residence and a hangar with access onto the main airport facility, seen as a very sort of a growth development in other airports, with a number of places successfully undertaking similar developments. So following recent meetings with the Aero Club and also last week with the Airport Advisory Committee, council staff are proposing to prepare a business case for the development of the Sky Park. It's an area not in the sort of our normal experience of that, so getting assistance to help with the development and putting it together. At the moment, any work, getting in consultants isn't funded in council's budget, so staff are requesting $30,000 from the existing reserve for the airport industrial land development be allocated towards to assist with the Sky Park development, and then that would be if the development goes ahead and the lots are sold, that $30,000 would then be put back into that reserve, so recharging that reserve. So comments from the advisory committee and in other areas, definitely it's a very positive development. It's been successful in other places. The advisory committee actually had some very good comments about layouts and issues like that, which was good. We did tell them that it was just very much an early model with a ribbon development, and they came up with some other options, as well as some other areas within the precinct, namely near the existing private hangar area that may allow for smaller lots, so that we provide some small lot Sky Park lots, as well as some larger lot ones, which again would improve the viability of the development. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor, and
Moved by councillor McGrath.
comment. That's all right.
We got a second?
Yes.
Councillor McAllister.
I'd just like to thank Mark and Cassie for getting the minutes of the advisory committee meeting to us prior to today. Cassie, thank you. Because I think they have raised some interesting perspectives, and being the airport users, just about the options for more area to be used, you know, lot sizes and widths, particularly for some of the lots. So I think that was quite positive, and I hope that, you know, through the process, some of those ideas and thoughts from that committee can be included in the sort of scoping of the project.
Thanks, councillor McGrath. Any other questions or comments?
Will those ideas come back within, like, were they captured within the minutes? So will all of the councillors be privy to those ideas and the likes?
The minutes were circulated
Right.
yesterday. Day before.
I haven't read them.
Yeah, I'll just check that they went out to all councillors. They went to all the
Went out at 15 anyway.
to the councillors who are on the committee. I'll make sure that they go out to all councillors.
You shared it
You, sorry, it didn't go to all councillors.
No, it didn't.
No,
It
no,
did
I
not.
didn't think I
Yeah,
did.
no, we'll make sure.
It went to Adam McSwain though.
Adam McSwain.
Really?
He's still on some of the emails.
Oops.
Well, he's Edward River address. So
Edward
Yeah.
yeah.
The current general manager is definitely receiving those notes and able to action.
Good.
Do Mr. Mayor, also the consultation through the business case will involve the airport advisory committee as well. to sort of flesh out those ideas in a bit more detail.
In fact, it meet the results from that meeting also. I think they're very keen to have a more consistent meeting than once every 2 years. Any further questions on 10.14? Moved and seconded. We've done. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes, carried. 10.15.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. So as Michelle noted earlier, our council has received interest requests on development of area within the airport precinct that has been earmarked for industrial development, both through the master plan and through the industrial land strategy. So as part of reviewing the request, staff have looked through and revisited council's sale of council land policy. So the most relevant policy relating to the request and this action. As part of the sale of land policy, there's a step in there for council in determining that the land is surplus to the operational and community needs, that it goes out, or council's intentions go out for a 28-day public exhibition period, and then any comments around that come back to council. Now that's around whether the land is surplus to council's needs. It's not how the land's developed, who council would sell it to, or any of those issues. It's just around assisting council making a decision that it is surplus to council's needs. As part of it, it was discussed at the last workshop, but as part of the follow-up from there, we have sought legal opinion from council solicitors that came in just as the report was being put together, and then it also received sort of a bit more around that. In summary, the legal opinion is that whilst the land has been highlighted in documents such as the master plan and the industrial land strategy, that shows council's intent that in future the land will be used for industrial purposes. It doesn't actually, the legal opinion is it doesn't meet the requirement that council has determined. The land is surplus for operational and community needs as included in the policy. So it's staff's recommendation in terms of transparency and openness in regards to this matter. The council undertake the public exhibition period and then receive a further report regarding the process at the end of that exhibition period, which would be able to be completed before council goes into caretaker.
I'll move that, Mr. Mayor.
Moved by councillor Wallace, seconded by councillor Bull. Any questions or comments?
Question,
Councillor
Mr.
Fogarty.
Mayor. Is it possible for the two processes to run concurrently? That we could put it out to get people's opinion, but at the same time lodge the expression of interest that if the advice comes back from the community that the land is superfluous to our needs, we're then in a position to move automatically into the sale. Have we explored if that is a possibility? Just in terms of consolidating time.
Ask that question specifically.
Yeah, so thank you, councillor Fogarty. Yeah, and that's has been asked by the workshop and by the general manager and that. So in reviewing the policy, item 4 in the policy states, prior to the sale of any operational land, an advertisement must be placed in council's regular print media outlets advising the proposed sale. 28-day notice period is to allow members of the community to make submissions in relation to the proposed sale. Following the period of public exhibition, a further report will be brought to council detailing any submissions received, enabling council to reach an informed position on whether to proceed or not with the sale of the land. So that clearly states the requirement for the 28-day notice period. It then talks about in 5 the methods of disposal. The sale of operational land can be by public competitive sale, auction or expression of interest, private sale or other sales. So it's staff's understanding of the process is that the 28-day period to get community submissions regarding the sale is a separate process to the EOI, because the EOI is, the method of disposal is part of the sale of the operational land. And item 4 does state that you need to go through the public exhibition period before council can make a resolution to go out to any sale. And that was included in the legal advice, reading it the same way. Now that could be seen as a conservative way of seeing the policy and how it's been put together and how it can be interpreted. But in terms of risk back to council and an open and transparent way of dealing with these matters, that's why staff have taken a conservative way of looking at it.
I guess conservative is good
Yeah.
and it demonstrates we are open and transparent. It can often lead to challenges that can be foregone because too much time's being taken.
Which we've had experience with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just comment on this, it is very much, there's been some interest by local members of industry who are interested in relocating themselves to expand onto airport land, which is why this was initiated. We believe it's in the best interest of council and the community to get this done as soon as possible, particularly as one of those interested parties has some particular time constraints around whether there is some land available on the airport to negotiate or not. We would like to get this done as soon as possible. So, but with this approach, it is a matter of legal opinion, and that's just opinion. It could be probably argued two ways, whether it's conservative or otherwise. That I think from a transparency point of view, it'd be better we take deliberate steps, one step and then the second one. And we have some optimism that we think we could get this in front of the council with potentially a special meeting prior to the caretaker period. Without rushing it, but making sure we take the deliberate steps of indicating to the community that we wish to sell some land on the airport, hearing their submissions, and then undertaking an EOI to cast a reasonably wide net as to who wants to use land at the airport for industrial purposes, what is that use and how much land do they need and where would they like to go. So we can't keep that net rather open fairly widely. And if there's people who are pretty itching to go now, we could potentially put that to the council prior to the caretaker period.
So just throw that in, Mr. Mayor, the 28 days, is that ready to go?
Yes. Yeah. So the intent, depending on council's resolution,
Yeah.
that would start tomorrow.
I'll move the resolution
Moved by councillor McAllister.
process.
Haven't we done that already?
No, Councillor Wallace.
Oh,
Councillor Ball's already done that.
Yeah.
So you're right. So 28 days, which means the end of July,
15th of July.
So
which is before the July meeting.
No, unfortunately, July is an early month in terms of the timing of the council standard timing, given that the 1st of July is a Thursday. So it's like the earliest month. The council meeting is the 15th. The 28 days would finish on the 16th, being the Friday after the next council meeting. So to come back in would require an extraordinary meeting prior to council going into caretaker.
Which is a potential that you could do it at the workshop in August.
Just do that.
Yes.
Question, Mark, the area of land on McKnight Drive on the map on page 351 there's some activity on that block already. I'm just wondering who and what that is and whether they're impacted by this.
So thank you, councillor McCrabb. The activity on that land is actually a council depot. It's like our, the depot we use as storage, long-term storage, I think would be the best way of describing it. So depending on how that developed, council can definitely work around it.
Thank you.
Any further questions or comments? All those in favour? Carried. 10.16 operations update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just the monthly operations department update, just capturing the work undertaken, operations and infrastructure for May, June regarding some major works, maintenance works, parks and gardens, and weed spraying throughout the area, just giving some information and metrics on the activities that operations undertake.
Someone will move the recommendation that we note and receive, moved by councillor Metcalfe. Second by
I'm happy to
councillor Paul.
second, and I was just going
Question.
to congratulate Mark on that presentation so that we know what's happening. That's a big improvement.
No, thank you.
Thank you, councillor Paul. Councillor Metcalfe.
Just in regards to the 2 new staff on the outdoor plant operators, are they local who won the position, or are they, do you know?
One is a local, one is coming back into the area. They have property in the area, but are working for another council at the moment, but they're coming back into the area.
Do they have any expertise in graders?
Yes, the person who's coming back in is a grader operator for current Victorian Council.
Thank you. Excellent. It's very good.
Was that in the recommend, in terms of reference to who you appoint, the grader operator?
It was very much, in terms of the criteria, and it comes through because as plan operators, they come through as a desirable criteria, but during the process and interviews, it was very, very much highlighted that need.
Councillor Metcalfe didn't twist your arm.
Not at all.
Come on.
Second one. Good, moved and seconded for the 10.16. Any further questions, councillor Wallace?
Could I just ask Mark that were any of the local firms successful in tendering for any of those vehicles? Rangers, utes, etc.
Yes.
Yeah, they were.
Yeah. So yes, the local.
All of them?
All of them.
Oh,
through the local.
Very good.
Oh, that's nice.
Can I just ask Mark, how did Kelly Street end up after all the rain that we had? Because it was always such a problem. Did the new works work?
Yes, so I've had a few inspections and spoken to staff around it. So the new, with the new curb in there and the new shape, it has worked very well, which I'm very pleased of. Whilst we know there'll be bigger storms, but yeah, I think the objectives that we're trying to achieve in there, especially in the drainage, the works we're doing are definitely working towards that.
Because the sooner it gets sealed, the better. It's quite the racetrack at the moment.
It
I think
is-
do all the work you've done if it's not hurried up and
The
sealed.
operation staff are a little bit frustrated at the moment in terms of sealing that and also sealing a section of Moore organised for those.
It's a good thing, Mark.
Bring on the rain.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it is, the challenges as we do when we continue to do construction through winter. So it's part of its programming, which we're working on to try and move more of our road construction, especially where it needs sealing, into the summer months, more the construction period. and go into more maintenance in the winter. But yeah, so they're managing that at the moment.
Because it looks good, but whether it was, how
Yeah,
functionable it turned
Yeah,
out
no,
to be.
I'm happy with sort of
No more
how.
boats for the schoolyard.
Sorry.
No more boats for the
No,
schoolyard.
no, I hope not. No.
Good job.
Yeah, so just councillors through, Mr Mayor, note the progress on the arrowhead weed control at Waring Gardens. That old chestnut. They've done the work around, continuing to do work around the edge, close to the shore, and there's been an external contractor engaged to harvest the thicker weeds in the middle of in the more deeper waters, in the middle of the lagoon, but they won't be able to get in until the end of July. So
I think you might check whether it's Arrowhead or a Lismore, and that sort of has an impact on how it's controlled.
Yes.
And I wish you luck with the lawnmower.
Yes.
Because it's not going to work.
No. I was going to raise it.
Why
in
did
general
we go
business.
down that road?
I was going to raise it in general business.
It's about the plant and its corms and everything like that. So, and look,
you've got to dig it out.
The lawnmower will work if you want,
Temporary
beautify it,
measure.
things like that, but you're not going to get rid of it, mowing it.
It's a file which has got to be extracted.
Councillor Burke?
No. This is Councillor McAllister because he was a rice farmer and
Not with this lawnmower we want to go.
No, the lawnmower just cuts it.
Which was a waste of money.
Oh, well, it's a way of beautifying and getting the duck
At least you
somewhere
can
to
see the
swim
water
and
in
things
there
like that,
now.
but essentially you're not going to control it with the lawnmower.
Stop people walking into it.
Yes.
So it's either chemical or you drain the lake and get a frost
Get a
on it,
frost on
and
it.
we're not going to probably do that either.
Yeah,
Unless you don't
so,
relocate the
yeah,
fish.
it is, the lawn mowing, for want of a better word, the harvesting, is a way of managing as it is at the moment, where it's totally sort of taken over that, to fully remove it, either through sprays, which, staff have been trying to find a suitable one. It's not that easy to find sprays for this that you can use in waterway areas. And then, so the other option would be draining it and frost and removing it. So during the work and working with the Lagoons group, we have highlighted that to them. So we'll definitely continue to work with them to find a way of draining and doing that. So,
and I think the other one, Mark, is confine it. Don't let it get into the.
And that's So there's
that's
a little bit in the Sed Basin in the Birchfield Lagoon. Just that's a bit on Wellington Street. So we'll definitely knock that out as well.
Yeah. Pull it out.
Yeah, use the excavators for that one, I think.
It has to be done with all the effort and money we've spent in Waring Gardens.
And that's one of the challenges. I understand the discussions around draining it and cleaning it out, but knowing what that entailed when we did that project at McFall, it's a lot of heavy equipment, a lot of trucks, and then a lot of disturbance, and you drag mud and slush through town. So that's why I want to make sure if we do go ahead with that sort of project, that it's actually fully thought through, and how we do get those implements and everything into the area. So it may be coming off Edward Street or something. It needs to be well thought out about how. Absolutely. No, we've put too much into it.
On the other hand, it doesn't look too bad. Like it's. I don't mind it. It's quite pretty.
Beautiful.
It is. and it stops the ducks.
Stops the water going through too.
Didn't we put, but wasn't that put in there to help with the propagation of some
fish?
Endangered fish.
Yes.
Now they're
So if we're
choking
going to
on it.
lower water,
Like most
So the ducks
we
couldn't
need
get
advice on those little creatures that have developed there?
That's
That's
part of the discussion, but it's not the, it's not the primary part of it. When council and staff have been dealing with the Lagoons Group over time, we've always been adamant that the lagoon system remains a stormwater system for town, where we can get benefits. Now, and the recent discussions, and they've acknowledged it, is that's the same. So whilst the objectives both groups are trying to, both council and the lagoon to try to meet are good, from council's point of view, it's part of our stormwater system. So if we need to do works around that, that's what we'll be promoting.
That was the very much highlighted when these groups were formed back in the Renewable Council days, that the major concern of the council at the time was the core activity of that drainage is stormwater drain. It's why it's beautiful and can be made very lovely. The core reason is that it's stormwater. And it needs to act like that.
Sounds like environmental actions have overtaken that.
Oh, well, I think you've got to find the happy medium, but I think it's probably gone a little bit too far.
The discussions we'll have with them.
Yeah. Yes, it was certainly made very clear.
You might have to, it might end up like the Barmer Choke. You might have to put a channel around it.
Or pipe it.
No, underground.
Pipe it.
Any further questions or comments on item 10.16?
Sensible comment.
Councillor Wallace.
Yes, I'd just like it passed on to the outdoor staff that they've done a fantastic job out at that cemetery, removing those old trees, fencing, etc. Looks brilliant. And renewing the fence, etc. And the question, under weeds, have we got a car key program? Is the car key program still tracking?
No.
No.
Yeah, I'll need to take that on notice. My understanding is that there still is that program. We know car key falls into that area of not being a noxious weed, but something council undertakes because of the benefits to the community. Take it on notice, and I'll come back to council with what.
I'm just wondering
where our staff see that program and where council sort of
So mate, the last real program that was funded by LLS, there was money come to the councils to do non-essential noxious weeds, and that would have been 2.5, 3 years ago. There was 50 grand come.
Yeah, that's spare money left though, didn't it?
Yeah, but it came through LLS to a grant to the council, which was the last program on car key, but they might do it routinely. So
It does say car key program still tracking well. I think Councillor Wallace is after a little bit more.
A little bit more information around.
Not much.
Is that in town and out of town control? Because it just is rampant in town as well.
My understanding has been.
It is.
Probably less so more in town, just that in town, especially on nature strips and that, it's always been back onto the property owner to look after their nature strips. But in the areas, as part of following this up, I'll find out what we're doing urban and rural and how we're tracking.
Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Moved and seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Item 10.17, major projects program. Chairman, progress report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So it's a monthly update on the major projects that are still tracking well. In the attachment with the traffic light reporting, the ones noted there as yellow, the ones where council staff are talking with funding bodies, but we don't have extensions to the funding agreements on record. So staff are just continuing to talk with the funding bodies to ensure that we get those there. The last time, just note that the funding bodies, both federal and state, have been very good to work with. Acknowledge the challenges councils, not just this council, but all councils facing around COVID, around amalgamations and that. So they've been quite good to work with in terms of extensions and changes with milestones. In terms of major funding, one of the programs out at the moment is the Stronger Country Communities Round 4 funding program. It's $1.5 million has been earmarked for the Edward River LGA. Now that program is open to councils, but also not-for-profits and non-incorporated groups. So where previous rounds of the Stronger Country Communities Fund has been for council to fully manage in and of itself, this one has now gone out to the wider group. Based on that, council staff have been contacting and talking with the groups, but we've been encouraging the groups to make their own applications, given the breadth of it. In talking with the groups, council staff are looking at putting in one project around the sporting grounds, or with the major sporting grounds being the Harding Street Oval with the Rams, Memorial Park with the Rovers and cricket, and Blighty. They've all brought up in different user group meetings around lighting, improvements with the lighting, going to LED lighting. So staff are looking at putting up a project for that, incorporating all three to be funded under this program. The cost for that would be in the order of $1 million to do those three grounds. Looking at that being a council, I'm just going across three different facilities. It's only sort of one group, one facility. It's up to the group to support it with council's consent as landowner, but where it's gone across a number of groups, that's where council's looking at sort of leading that project.
Is it possible to, because I get lost with the grants that come in, like we hear different things and a lot of it's after we've got it, and is there a summary we can have in this, like a report here saying, because these all this major that can be up to 3 to 4 years of different funding kind of, for say 2021, can we have a list of the funding that's coming in that we've received and what we're actually applying for? So then we've got a bit of a track on as councillors where we're up to individual year for that year. Because like they're small, like I know Michelle gets a lot of funding coming in there, like you wouldn't have a clue. So it's just to keep us up to speed with what's going on in terms of that side of things.
Yep. Absolutely, councillor. So that's the intent of this report, but I think it's being a bit, just being a bit lost, as you say, just through the sheer volume.
A lot of volume.
And 3 months ago, 6 months ago, we were thinking, as we were going through the budget process, we were thinking that we were coming off a high funding thing, and a lot of the discussion was, okay, we've got to, with the budget, get it back to what would be a business as usual budget for council into the future. Well, the last 3 months, with the amount of funding that's come through, it's highlighted that no, the funding levels are going to be similar to the last few years. So, more than happy to take that on board and bring a report.
Through Mr. Mayor, in this budget discussions we had, we talked about where there's a bit of a capacity gap in the workforce in terms of proactively looking out for managing grants. So council's agreed to fund in this next budget a community development officer, going for recruitment under that. So that'll allow us to pick up a bit more proactive work in grant management.
Just a question, estates and town hall building progressing along on time, and how's the dollars?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor. The easier one first, the dollars are going really well. Right. So the project manager has been able to, as work's going through, sort of as in those programs, unders and overs. At the moment, there's still a contingency of over $300,000 in the project, and the expectations are that moving forward there'll be more unders than overs. So budget-wise, it's going well. Time-wise progress, the information coming through from the contractor and the project manager is it's still in line with the programs. We continually sort of challenge that just that, we're hearing through other areas, concerns around material availabilities and things like that, and especially one of them is steel. Tradespeople, builders are finding it hard to get reinforcing steel and structural steel. So there's big components of that in the town hall. So we're fully expecting that, if there's problems within the industry as a whole, it's going to impact our project. So we're just making sure that we're challenging them to say, look, we need to know if it is, we need to know the dates rather than just keep saying, oh yeah, it's on track, please. Especially issues that are outside the contractor's control, which supply materials would be. So at the moment it is tracking on time, but we continually raise that with them.
Good to hear the dollars, because the contingency I know was high because we didn't know what gremlins we were going to find. So
Yes,
therefore there mightn't be as many gremlins as
we've found a lot of gremlins. There was a lot. It was lucky that when a lot of the gremlins were being found, the council was able to get additional grant funding, so different rounds of different grant funding, and that makes it complex because there's half a dozen funding sources for the project. But yeah, so we've found plenty of gremlins, but where they're at the moment, they're through most.
good.
Mr. Mayor, could I just backtrack there a fraction, Mark? If we come in well under budget, how do we get on with the funding body then?
It'll be spent.
Don't worry.
So
Sure.
Grand opening just got a whole lot better, mate.
No, so generally in the grant funding is, you spend the full amount. If you don't, it needs to be returned. The contingency that we're working with at the moment is really from council's contributions to the project. So it's not so much contingencies that have been built into grant funding. They don't. They're very much against councils putting contingency in. So we're very mindful that whilst the contingency is there, it's being sourced from council funds.
Just the internal painting of the Blighty Hill, considering the nature of the people out there, would we do a good survey to find out the colour was right?
Same as the existing colour, and they were happy with it at the discussion at the last meeting.
See, it's already started. Any other questions or comments?
Could I just ask how we're going with the redevelopment of the North to Auckland tennis courts?
That project's progressing. We're just still getting pricing from contractors. So we're with that one. So.
And the Waring Gardens fence won't be completed this financial year, I take it?
You won't see it because of the arrowhead.
Yeah.
We're waiting on
We're in
the.
trouble if the arrowweed gets that high.
It's Elisma, not arrowhead. It's Elisma.
Elizabeth.
Elisma Lancelot.
Elisma.
Thank you.
I'll call it arrowhead because that's what Dr. John told me.
Well,
He's wrong.
Dr. John's led us down the track a couple of times.
But didn't he plant it though? Didn't Dr. John plant it?
Yes.
Now he wants to get rid of it.
We want to get rid of it.
Well, we want to get rid of it.
So how's the fence going?
The materials have been ordered, so we're just waiting on the supply of the materials for that fence.
So it's not going to be done this year?
It's unlikely to be done in the next 2 weeks, being to the end of the financial year, but fully committed. And
So the funds will be moved in the next financial year contingency.
Yes.
The Wolfer Park?
Yes, that's been local contractors been engaged to do that work. So again, with the grant funding, that will go into that. So I'd hope we'd see them on the ground very shortly with that one. But yeah, we have engaged someone local.
I'm happy to move. I do have another question.
Yes, moved by Councillor McCrab, second by Councillor Wallace. Yes, Councillor McCrab.
Would you just like to give us a verbal on yesterday's sale yards meeting, please, Mark? Do you want to do that?
I was going to do it outside of
Yeah, right, that's fine.
after this.
That bad.
No, might
I
take a
think we
while.
can talk a little bit freer.
Yeah,
about
that's fine. Yep.
Any further questions on the major projects report? Moved and seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
It is carried, and thank you very much for a very good report, Mark.
Thanks to the staff.
Well done, Kat.
In fact, I must admit, I passed it on to Mark yesterday that as a result of one of our local large ratepayers about the condition of his road, and action was happened straight virtually within a week, and he actually came back and rang me up and said, thank you very much, good to see you. So Mark's going to pass that on to the blokes he looked after. I won't name who it is.
Parallel.
No, that's right. Yeah.
That concludes the general meeting. So it closed, no, I can't close that, not yet. Would someone like to move that we move into confidential council? Moved by councillor McGregor, seconded by councillor
Yeah, right.
Metz. All those in favour?
Aye.
It is carried.
Technology.
It was very.
That's good.
Almost.
Rang me on the other day, but we'll talk about other stuff. But medical.
I don't want to say what you
Displeasure about increasing rates. Biggest rate part. Up in the air.
We're on, okay. He's back into general counsel, and I'd like to read the recommendations out of the confidential counsel.
That's the reason for confidentiality.
Oh, right, sorry, I skipped.
So what is the recommendation in the box?
You need to, that's right. We'll get ourselves right. Item 13.1 is the write-off, request to write off debtor accounts. The recommendation is the council receive and note the report, and to authorise the write-off of bad trade debts amounting to $13,860.68 for the financial year 2021 that are unrecoverable in accordance with clause 213 of the Local Government Regulation 2005. Item 13.2 is contract C 2021-06 George Street Reconstruction 2021. And the recommendation is that council accepts the revised tender submitted by Denny Civil Construction for the contract for the George Street reconstruction for the lump sum tender price of $184,263 plus GST. Item 2 is authorise the General Manager and the Mayor to assign and affix the common seal of the Everett River Council to the contract documentation. And item 3 is delegate the contract superintendent to approve variations up to a maximum of 10% of the contract value. That finishes the report for that, and that's no further for the general meeting. I'd close the meeting and thank you very much. We'll have a 5-minute break to get a cup of coffee, and then we'll come back and we'll answer questions like